Welcome to the Social Media Church Podcast. I'm Neil Smith, joined by a legend that is not new to this podcast, but you might not know who he is yet. So let me give a bit of introduction to Jay Kranda. Jay is a great husband, great dad, a great friend, and the online pastor at Saddleback Church. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. And if you ask ChatGPT who I am, it knows who I am, and I'm very impressed by it. I was like surprised when it it has some funny line, like a very like it was something like foundational online pastor. It has some answer. My kids were like, we were joking around with ChatGPT, like waiting to get haircuts, and we asked it, and I was like, they're like, wow, it knows. I'm like, dang. I was like, this is getting creepy. Like, there's no way
awesome.
ChatGPT should know who I am. But anyway,
same. And I think we both have semi-unique names in different ways.
That's true.
And my kids were actually very impressed by that as well, because nobody else in my family is, ChatGPT knows who they are, but, having a name like Nils or Kranda
correct
helps in the ChatGPT world. Jay, what is something, because you've been on this podcast a lot and a number of times, a lot of people know who you are and things you do. What is something maybe that people don't know about you that we could share as a first time insight into who is Jay Kranda?
Who is Jay Kranda? Oh man. Oh, interesting. I mean, I think some may know this, but I will say that I'm very much probably not like an early adopter to technology.
Yep.
I know this between you and I being friends for over 10 years. Like, you're an early adopter to technology. Like, you're the guy who's like, you're the first one I knew that had a 3D printer. Like, you were doing all sorts of stuff. And I'm a very skeptical person in the sense that I kind of tend to be very frugal, and I tend to be very practical. Like, how does this integrate? So I think this is why typically when I'm talking to other pastors or friends, or even considering stuff in my own church, I'm trying to figure out, how does this actually scale or work in our daily? So this might be a cool thing, but so I think that's always a very unique trait about me, especially being an online pastor, where you have a lot of online pastors that are, I mean, there's not a lot of us, but I think sometimes we tend to be so cutting edge. And I always find it funny where people think where somebody thinks I'm cutting edge because I'm an online pastor. And I'm like, I don't know. My tech that I have even in my house or integrated in my daily life is pretty stable. Like, it's like, it's like when people get into crazy home automation, like there's a lot of home automations that are kind of pointless. And so like, I just installed, like, I was trying to think about, I have like a closet in our bedroom that's like a walk-in closet, and the light switch was like on the other side of the wall. It's kind of annoying. And we had lived in our house for 3 years, and I was like, how do I automate this?
Yes.
Well, I was looking at like sensors, and there's a lot of ways now, you can go on YouTube and there's all these like tools. Well, I just ended up just buying a motion LED light.
Yep.
And I was like, that's the easy. I don't need a sensor on the wall. I don't need just a motion LED light. Now, I did look up on YouTube how to rewire the light myself, so I didn't have to hire an electrician. So that is something that I love about YouTube. But I would say I'm very practical. And I think this is why you and I have we always kind of go back and forth. Right before we were recording, we were talking about the Quest 3, and we were talking about, and I was being skeptical. I was like, I love it, but I don't know how to use it practically just yet. So I think that'd be one thing.
Okay, we're going to talk about the Quest 3 in this episode, because I do, one of the things they're describing VR as the word I've been hearing, phrase maybe that I've been hearing around virtual reality is it's the final computing platform that will ever be created, which is an interesting concept. Just when you think about that language, when it comes to just computer innovation, where we think there will never be a final. It will always be, always be something else. But it is interesting as you do think about like where else could it go? But who knows? We'll dig into that. Jay, I would describe you as one of the most curious people
Mm.
I've ever met, that you might be skeptical, but you are always just in, interested in learning something new. The other thing I would describe you as that's led to the success you've had, and I can't imagine that there's anybody else that could hold this title. You are the longest standing online pastor in the history of online ministry. And I think I was just Robert Emmett, who was my old pastor,
Yeah.
texted me the other day, and he was like, when did we start onlinechurch.com at Community Bible Church? And I went back and looked, and it was 13 years ago,
Wow.
in whatever it was. And you had started before that a little bit, I think,
Mhm.
in your role. And I was out like 7 years ago, of online ministry full time,
Is
vocationally.
this a good thing? Are we presenting this like it's
I
a
think
good
it's a
idea that I'm still
legendary
doing
thing,
it?
because this is, people are always asking me like, where do I find, or, you and I get this question a lot of like, where do I find somebody, like, I want to hire an online pastor and want somebody with like 5 years experience. There's like five of us in the
Yeah.
world, like
Yeah.
there's no one with online, and definitely no one with like 14 years of online ministry experience. And so Jay, and I think people probably watching this are like, but the guy's like 24 years old when they
I don't know
see
about
you.
that anymore, Niels.
you
I got my gray here, so I don't know about that.
yeah, but you have aged better than the rest of us. I ran, and I bumped into Alan George at the airport the other day.
Yeah.
He's probably the other longest standing. He was probably in it for 12, 13 years. And he and I have the full like gray
Full on
beards
beard.
coming in.
Yeah.
And so, Jay, you are a legend in this space. And really where this conversation came from is what I appreciate more. What I want to share a few things that I appreciate about you, Jay. And I give you a hard time. And you were the second host. You and I co-hosted this podcast for several years together. And I would even say, even out of the curiosity, I think back to the days of like, we were doing this on Skype because that was the only video conferencing
It's
platform that we
true.
could use. And like, we were like, what kind of microphone? We were finding all kinds of what is a $20, like I can't spend the
That
all
was
this money
when
for all this
Yetis were
gear.
cool. They're
That
no
was when
longer cool.
Yetis were cool, but even they were also like pretty expensive. They're like $200
Yeah.
back then. And I remember trying to justify that to my wife, but you and I were also going to like Home Depot and getting like canned lights to get some
Yeah.
lighting set up, and trying to figure out like, how do we do this? And I think your curiosity and
Mm.
setting up backdrops and just some of the thoughtfulness and intentionality, it's just been fun to navigate so many of these kind of technologies. But at the end of the day, what I love, Jay, is you your curiosity though is about how can I do more ministry. And I
Mm.
think why you've been so successful is you've learned about the technology, but your passion is not technology. Your passion is ministry.
Mm.
Um, and you are a pastor to the core. And in many ways, Jay, you have been a pastor to me, and you've been a pastor to so many people
Mm.
in your heart to just care for people. And you've just leaned into technology as a tool to love people and point
Mm.
people to Jesus. And it's been awesome to just watch and to experience. And so every time I'm in Orange County, I call you and I'm like, Jay, can
Let's do
we
it.
coffee or something? And we were just catching up just like we do last week. And you were telling me about a cohort that you're launching this next year
Yeah.
to help some online pastors. So we're going to talk about that. So I just want to tease that. We're going to talk about that at the end of the podcast, and how you really just want to hand select a handful of online ministry leaders to just journey with over the next year. And I'm just so excited for whoever those
Mm.
individuals are going to be, because I know you're going to pour everything
Mm.
into those, and you don't want to get like 500 and and do this at mass. You want to really handpick and grow with those leaders. And so but you and I get we get over coffee and we're like, we just go down these like rabbit trails that are so exciting. And so I was like, Jay, we got to get back on a podcast and record this and talk about it. So I got so many questions for you. You also, one last thing about why I love Jay Kranda.
This is
It
too
is
much now.
6:30 in the morning,
It,
Pacific time. It's 9:30 my time on the East Coast, and you were willing to get up at 6:30 to record this podcast for me, for us, for all the listeners. That is your commitment to online pastor. So, Jay, I love you.
yeah.
Even I mean, I love you more than Kenny Jang. You know, like I'm just gonna say that. I
Well, I
like
don't
Kenny
want
Jang
Kenny
a
to come
lot.
after me. I don't. That's a powerful dude right there.
Well,
Well, I
yeah,
will say that Nils, you're always very kind to me, and so I we're very, one of the things that we have together is just doing ministry for a long period of time together and watching
yeah.
these different waves, and so 1,000 times back, this is I'm not good at words of affirmation, clearly, because I'm like struggling right now.
Well, just receive it,
I'm
receive it,
receiving it.
and
I'm
and
receiving.
you've just been such a great friend
I feel like I'm in
to me.
therapy right now. Like it's like like they're like, okay, you got to deal with this, and so I'm
Yeah.
gonna have my wife
You
listen to
you
this.
do,
Like,
yeah. Hey guys, it's Neil Smith, and I'm interrupting this episode to highlight one of our sponsors. And this sponsors is one of the companies that I recently acquired, and it's a company called Church Press. And I was blown away when I found out about Church Press, and it is the most SEO optimized search engine optimization optimized website platform for churches. And it is one price, and it covers everything you need to have a great website presence, to design, set up a beautiful website that works great, but I think most importantly is found by Google so that people can find your church. And so if you want to upgrade your website or build a new website, we would love to help. Go to churchpress.co and you can get more information and learn more. We also have a free SEO audit that you can get right there on the website of your website. So if you want to see how optimized your website is, just go to churchpress.co and you don't have to sign up for anything. It's totally free. And we would love to help you build a better website that is found by Google. Let's get back to the episode. You do have to deal with it because you pour into me 10 times more than these words are just what the fruits of your investment into my life. As a guy that's probably like 10 years older than you, you have matured me
thanks, man. Thanks.
in a lot of ways. But let's talk about online ministry. You know,
Yeah.
so in this episode, I really want to just dig into the state of online church, online ministry. Jay, when it comes to 2023, what were some of the learnings? What are some of the trends maybe that you experienced? What are some of the changes maybe you made at Saddleback when it comes to online ministry this past year?
Yeah, a lot of big changes. Obviously, it was kind of our first full year with our new pastor, and so one of the things was we had a generational pastor as our founding pastor.
Yep.
Pastor Rick Warren, and I was trying to navigate between, as somebody who had been at our church for since '09 and the end of '08. And I kind of knew our numbers. I was trying to figure out like what was going to happen when he left. Like,
Yeah.
because especially online, you're going to have a lot of people that are just tuning in because of who he is. And so it was interesting to navigate a full year of, we had some declining viewership and trying to
Yeah.
figure out, I knew that was going to happen, but I was trying to figure out like, how do we plan, when you have a deceleration of growth, it's hard to kind of figure out what is the bottom, because it's
Yeah.
like, hey, we're going to trim 20% off the top or whatever it is. And you just got to plan. So it was kind of like trying to figure that out. But what was fun was, as we were getting, one of the cool things was we were getting a lot of new engagement too. Cause, we had a new pastor, younger and different types of engagement was coming. And so there's this interesting year of, deceleration of growth in one way, but new types of engagement.
Yep.
And in those phases, it's really hard to figure out, what your plan is. So I think there was a good couple months of just figuring out what we were doing and what is exciting. Now, I think, and some people might not feel this way, but when you're not growing for whatever reason, and other areas were growing for us, but I think attendance wasn't growing.
Yep.
I think it allowed us to reevaluate what our strategy was coming out of this year. Cause I kind of knew like, we're going to go through a year and then we're going to have a new bottom and we can grow from there. And, so one of the big things we decided to do was our online community, our online kind of strategy as a whole. We really believed in it. Our new pastor believed in it. And we decided to kind of double down into creating something for our online community. So one of the big pivots was to kind of really disconnect our large location experience from what we put online. And so that was the big change about 4 or 5 months ago that we've been plotting it for probably 8 to 9 months. Well, actually I've been plotting a lot longer than that, but it was how do we do this? And so one of the big changes was we stream our first two Lake Forest live services, our largest location services,
Yeah.
on Saturday night, 4 and 6. And then we go into the studio. So I essentially, me and my team, we watch the 4 o'clock service. We go into the studio afterwards and custom record host moments and outro kind of moments. And
Yep.
then we kind of upload something by 10 o'clock on Saturday night that is
Mm.
shorter. So we actually, let's say they play 4 songs, we
Yep.
only select 2 songs.
Yep.
And then we create something. And really the target was for YouTube, how to
Yep.
create something just for a YouTube audience, talk to YouTubers. Like, it also goes up on other platforms. Like,
Yep.
it gets scheduled for Facebook Live on Sunday. It goes on our website, our TV apps and stuff like that.
Yep.
But that was a huge shift. And I think
Yeah.
it really has paid off in the sense of engagement. One of the big things that happened was, we always had intro and outro kind of things slapped onto a like our large service, but
Yes.
you're still talking to the room in between. And going to this online, one of the things that we've seen is more response cards come in because we're talking to those online. One of the other things, we wanted to create something for people to host services in their homes a little easier.
Yep.
We see more people do that. We've started to notice, I don't feel like I can say this out loud fully yet, but I've started to notice an uptick in giving. Just a little bit. I'm monitoring it
Yeah.
still. But that was the big thing. And then so we kind of moved away, kind of our online community has moved fully away from live.
Yep.
And even scheduled live, and we're just doing like on demand. And we've noticed, probably only like 3% of our total audience in a week watches live anymore.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think I remember getting in an argument with Kenny Jang about this years ago. He fully disagreed with me on this, and who knows, we'll see what happens. But I just think you're either in the room at a location there live.
Yep.
And then I don't know what the motivation is to watch real time anymore. And so it's like people watch either in community or by themselves. We'll just watch it on your own time. And so it's almost like we still live stream those things because honestly, we mainly live stream it because it's how we capture it and there's protocols in there. So I think that's the biggest thing we've done is create something custom just for YouTube. And it changed our workflow. And it's been a lot of work. Like, we do the generosity, like, give moment at the end. But it's been really good. And so there's a lot of things that came out of that, but I think that's the biggest thing we shift this past year, So I know I'm not trying to, a lot of churches are streaming live hosting. Some are using Chop. There's, the church online platform. And I'm seeing less and less, like, value for some of those things potentially. And I just think YouTube, everybody knows it, but I just like YouTube. Our YouTube channel is huge. I wanted to create something just for that. And I think we've had great success coming out of that so far. And it makes me excited for what we could do in the future.
Yeah, I love that. YouTube is just such a massive platform. And it is, there is that shift. And I think we have, and I remember at Community Bible Church, I was so like, we actually did simulated live was our primary distribution. And I think as I look back, and I wanted to go live so bad, and I was like, why can't we just go live? And I look back and like, I feel like I was kind of fighting the wrong fight of like, why can't we just go on demand? What I really, because that trend shouldn't be shocking, as we've watched Netflix and as we've watched other, just platforms grow, and live TV and even live streaming. Like, you just don't see people watching Facebook Live. I think the one platform where you see live engagement increasing is TikTok, but I'm curious if that's even going to stick long term. And so it really is this, we watch what we want to watch, where we want to watch, when we want to watch, on the platform we want to watch it on. And YouTube is just the platform, I think, that too is cross devices, from mobile to desktop to TVs are the fastest growing platform that people are watching YouTube on. And so I love that strategy. So Jay, if I understand this right, you are putting together a kind of a full experience, and then you're putting it on demand on YouTube, or are you streaming that live on YouTube?
No, we just make it on demand. No premiere, nothing. The tension was, because our church offers Saturday night services, I wanted to get it out
Yep.
as quick as possible on Saturday
Yep.
so that we can
Yep.
still hit a Sunday morning time internationally, at least something
Yes.
close. So
Yep.
like I could delay it and live stream it at 9 a.m., but that would be 9
Yep.
a.m. Pacific time.
Yep.
And I would miss. And so like, let's just make it live,
Yep.
meaning make it public. And yeah. And so a little shorter, my pastor even teased about recording shorter sermons for it in the future.
Yep.
But again, I think even our online community team, kind of that got probably out of that curiosity on my end. I think we're constantly experimenting with
Yeah.
ideas, and it's almost
Yep.
like we see our team as skunk works for the church. Like, let's just,
Yeah.
the same way as the youth teams do this, the youth
Yep.
teams always are doing something before everybody else. And you're like, wait, why
Yep.
can't we do texting?
Yep.
Wait, why can they do it?
Yep.
And it's like, and so I think online, like we'll experiment with a bunch of stuff. And so, but it's
Yes.
been, yeah, you can go to Saddleback Church's YouTube channel, check it out there. Yeah. But we're still wrestling through like one of the complicated ones was, you make this thing live and it's like, it's the message title, but then like a couple days later, we upload the message only on YouTube. So you have like,
Yep.
and so like one of the
Either
things
or.
we decided to do is we make something available on Saturday night, which is the full worship service.
Yep.
And it's branded as the online community worship service. And then
Yep.
and then we only leave that up for 7 days. And then
Interesting.
we
Okay. Then it's
unlist
just
it
the message. Yeah.
and then we add it to a playlist.
Yeah.
And so we technically only have the full worship service on our YouTube channel public for
Yep.
7 days.
Yeah.
And this is us, because one of the things is like, if you get beyond 7-8 days,
Yep.
like we kind of just want the message to be available, like in a
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
so, and it's still findable as a playlist. Like you
Yep.
can go back, you can go. And so it's a featured playlist, but those are the things we just had to learn. It's like, yeah, this is kind of terrible as like a duplicate content. And
Yeah.
and you and I were talking about this, but I made a video on my own YouTube channel about creating YouTube ads. I've been experimenting with YouTube ads, and I found out like if you put worship service in the title of your video and you try to run an ad to it, it gets automatically blocked for religious terms, and you have to like appeal it. And so I ended up removing the word worship service from the title, and we just used the thumbnail to describe it as a worship service. And, and it's not crawling that just yet. I think it will probably soon. But so like we had to remove worship service. It was just the title of the message. And so those are the things that you have to figure out in your own rhythm. Like, for example, like I think, as much as live is not as relevant in some ways and on demand is better for the user, I still think there's a tension here where like when I look at it like a church like Life Church, like what they do with the church online platform, they have a ton of engagement that is amazing, and that might work for their church. I kind of, it's like the tension. Netflix, even like you mentioned Netflix, they struggle with this. Like when they drop a bunch of episodes, it's great, but they lose the conversation and culture when not everybody is on the same episode. So this is why with like Stranger Things, they drop it in parts to kind of, the same way as like, years ago you could watch Game of Thrones, and everybody was like, drop an episode on a Sunday, and then you had so there is this tension with live and on demand. You got to figure out in your own church's rhythm. For us, I think we've just really leaned into this idea. We want people to be in the room, and if you're not in the room, we're going to make this super accessible. And so because we think that way, we're not really going to mess with scheduling, simulated live, all these other things. The only thing we kind of sim live still is our Facebook stream. And really, that's only because it's available on Saturday night, and on Resi, we use Resi as our streaming provider. It was really easy to schedule a Facebook Live on Sunday. And Facebook is terrible. Like if you're it's a lot easier to stream something to Facebook than to upload a video to Facebook.
Interesting.
And so like I would like, just let's schedule it. And so it's the only thing, but I think that's mainly because Facebook is not really a video platform. So it's like, it's not easy. I've many times uploaded videos to Facebook, like more than 3 megabytes or 3 gigs or whatever. And like, it never goes live. Like I'm like
process.
Yeah. It's like, whatever. But yeah, those are things that we've wrestled through over the last couple months.
I love that. And I love too that you're being native to the unique platforms. This is what is going to work on YouTube, where there's a mass amount of attention. I think one of the things I love about YouTube is it's not only is it multi-device from where people are consuming it, it's multi-generational. My kids were watching YouTube from like 3 years old, and it is their primary
Yeah,
digital platform that they're consuming content on. And my parents are watching YouTube and will send me links to YouTube videos, and it is like everyone watches YouTube. And I think I heard a stat the other day that the average American is watching about an hour and 10 minutes, or spending about an hour and 10 minutes on YouTube every
it's
day, where
crazy.
Instagram is like 23 minutes, and so you look at even just compare it to social media because that's micro content, but people are watching longer and longer form videos on YouTube. It's no longer like the minute and a half long cat videos. It is everything. People are watching 2 hour long podcast of just people talking
I know.
on YouTube. Music is still the number one thing consumed on YouTube. It is a bit of everything on the platform. And I love that you're prioritizing YouTube as a platform, but still like, hey, we've got an audience on Facebook, so let's do what's best and native for that platform with the content we're creating for that platform. Jay, as you look to 2024 and maybe even beyond 2024, what are some of the things that you're maybe dreaming about or looking towards into the future of online church?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we got really good at this past year, experimenting wise, is our church made a big shift to a digital program
Yeah,
where we have a printed program, of course, but the idea of having more tools and next steps available digitally.
yeah,
And I think I'm still wrestling through how do you get somebody on YouTube to take a next step that's
yeah,
seamless.
yeah,
So like it's just still a little hard to
yes,
scan a QR code on a screen,
yes,
to click a link in a just so like there's
yep,
so I think we have a lot of conversations around how do we make it easier and even more incentives for people to
yes,
do that. So it's like, like we've talking about a downloadable resource for every
yeah,
series we do. So it's like, hey, by the way, you can get this, like if we're doing a worship series, it's like you get this song that's only available, or we'll send you a playlist from
yeah,
Spotify for our worship team. So scan that.
yep,
And so like I think that's something like I still like, we have over 10,000 people watching every week, but I'm not always impressed by how many people fill out response cards,
yeah,
and so it's
yeah,
like if we had, let's say, something like in the neighborhood of 13,000 people watch 30 minutes the last 7 days or something like that. So we do
yep,
a 30-minute metric,
yep,
and we don't track it by viewers, but 30 minutes, like I think we had like 50 response cards.
okay,
And so I'm always like, now that was actually high, like that was a good week.
yeah,
But I'm constantly thinking about that. And so I think that's
yeah,
something I'm still like I remember my boss, we were talking, and he's not like a super techie guy. And he was just like, he said something that's like, hey, yeah, you have that QR code on the screen. Like if I'm watching that on my phone, how am I supposed to
yeah,
get that QR code?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, yeah, I mean, and I told him, I said, this is why we also say on our videos, like click the link in the description. We make the link in the
yeah, yeah,
description like the main
yep,
thing. And so, but it is something that I'm like, how do I make that thing better?
yes,
Think a lot about that. Another thing we're gonna do, I was just talking to somebody on my team about this. Like we are we want to double, triple down on our online group experiences. And so one of the
yeah,
things that we're gonna do is that we're just gonna have a running open Zoom group for people new to our community. So every month there'll be like a 4 to 5 week small group that anybody can join to kind of try out
yeah,
our community.
yep,
And the idea is that we're a small group with groups are essential to what we do, and we have over 500 groups with our community.
yep,
But um, I think we see more and more that if somebody can get into a small group and
yep,
try out our ministry, that they're more likely to move from a viewer to a member.
yeah,
And so I think we just like one of the guys on my team, he's really good at this. And he was like, I think we can have a group every month, like a new group. And the idea is
yeah,
run it for 4 weeks. It's led by staff or a key volunteer. And then out of that, we say, hey, you just did this, start one yourself. So just always
yeah,
having like a community experience is going to be really important. And then lastly, one thing I am I'm anxiously excited about, not because I think it will be a home run in the sense that it's going to be like tens of thousands of people, but we have somebody in our community who has a VR company, and
Okay.
he builds spaces for people, and he wants to build our church something in VR chat.
Wow.
And
Very cool.
I've known this guy for, probably 2 to 3 years, and he's an
Yes.
awesome dude. He goes to our church, young dude. And I did a VR chat event with him probably 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so he showed me some of his spaces just last week. And
Yeah.
he's like, what would it mean to host an actual church in VR chat? And so, if you follow VR, most people will know that VR chat is the biggest platform,
Yeah.
social
Yep.
platform
Yeah.
out there. And it's a little bit of the Wild West.
Yep.
And I'm very excited and so we're still trying to figure out, like, do we train him to be the pastor of this? And then, like, our pastoral staff rotate in, like,
Yeah.
every month. And so even that, like, how do we do it? Like, so
Yeah.
do we, like, we come up and we say hi at the beginning, and then we play part of the video, and then we come and then we do some prayer. So trying to figure out how to do that. I know a lot of churches, um, Sun Valley, Church on the Rock, Life
Yes.
Church. There's a lot of these experiences out there,
Yep.
but we're
Yep.
trying to figure out how to do it in a way that makes sense. But it's really nice, like, to have somebody who knows it and honestly offering it to us in a way. And so, like,
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but I get really excited because it's people that would never walk into our church. And so I'm kind
Yes.
of curious how to do this. I don't know what it will look like, but I'm kind of
Yeah.
pumped for experimenting on the idea.
Oh man, I want to dig into all those ideas. I want to pick two though, to dig into a little bit, because I want to come back to the VR chat thing because I'm really intrigued by that. But I think the challenge that you're running into around calls to action is probably the biggest tension that every church that's
Yeah.
doing online ministry is facing. Because Jay, when you and I got into this, it was desktop. Like we all just had a desktop experience, and it was so easy when it was just like click the link that's
Yeah.
right there on your screen, and you could just do or fill out the form that's right there on your screen, and you just use the keyboard that's right there in front of you to do this. But now somebody's watching on a TV, maybe they could do a QR code, but if they're on their phone, they can't. Or if there are so many different options. That the thing that I found to work best is a short code, like a text in this number. The problem with that is for a church like yours in particular, where a lot of people are watching from outside of the country, it's only going to work in the United States or whatever country you have that short code licensed in. Or you do a 10-digit number, but then 10 digits is too long to text and remember it. And so there is no easy, simple, definitive solution to calls to action that I have found to date. And I think that's going to be one of the key problems to solve. I think it's interesting as I'm watching like Hulu ads right now and how they're integrating a lot of QR codes or even click it on your remote. But as you think about cross device, cross experience, what does that look like? And I think even YouTube doesn't want you to leave YouTube, so they're not going to make it super easy within their platform. And so there are just some unique challenges, and I think that is the unique seat that you sit in as an online pastor. Everyone in online ministry is, by the time you figure out what's working best, things change and you have to adapt and adjust. But I think too, I love that you're not like, our goal isn't just to get people to watch. Our goal is to get people to take their next step, and that next step could be to join a group. That next step could be to give. That next step could be to volunteer and serve. And so I think that is a really unique challenge that you're facing. And I think it's one of the things that people are going to just need to, and I think collectively, one of the things I love that you've really prioritized is gathering other online pastors and like the collective learnings as we're experimenting with this, we're trying this. And I love that you're kind of sharing, this is what we're kind of leaning into, because that is a unique challenge. I think that everyone is facing. But let's get into the VR side of things, because I think where, as we look and I'm curious, even with 2024, do you think there's going to be greater doubt? You and I started playing with VR probably 9 years ago, and I remember being at Saddleback. We had Google Cardboard, and we were playing with it and looking at like, what can we do with this? And in some ways, it feels like it's just gone really slow. Where so much technology has moved really fast. Yet we were talking before this about the Quest 3, which is really the maybe best, headset that's available today, and that's affordable. And Apple has released, or it's kind of put out their initial headset with the whatever the Apple Pro, whatever Vision Pro.
Yeah, Vision. Yeah.
But it's like $3,500 or $5,000. What just no, like it's not a mass device that's being created, but they're getting into it. I mean, this is coming. Do you think 2024 we're going to see greater adoption, or do you think it's still far away and probably not even worth thinking too much about?
Yeah, I don't, it's funny when I was messing around with the Quest 3, and for those who don't know, it's like very much one of the big things was they added a bunch more cameras, bigger cameras on the device. It's lighter and it's more augmented reality focused, meaning that there's pass-through modes where you can see your surroundings. So one of the problems with, any of these devices early on, the early, Oculus to even, Oculus Go to the Quest 2 was you kind of had this very like locked in vibe, and the Vive and I mean all these other ones have similar things where you put them on and you're kind of in and it's cool, but you're kind of locked in. And most people, this isn't, if you listen to tech pods and people, they're like AR is the future, VR is not, and they kind of argue back and forth. And so, but I think what I did find when I put on my Quest 3 and it's loaded with a camera mode and it showed me my surroundings, it did make me feel not secluded. It made me feel more like open. And as you were saying about like talking about Google Cardboard and all these things, I was thinking about, I had a friend who at the time worked for a VR company who had this was like 9-8 years ago, had a HoloLens from Microsoft or whoever owned it at the time. And he showed me a mode of like where like it scanned your walls and then these bugs came out. And then it was funny because on Meta, on the Quest 3, they have a default game where they do that. And I was thinking how far that's come because the HoloLens is a very expensive device.
Yes.
And now there's just this default game on this Quest 3, which the Quest 3 is still, it's not cheap. Like, I mean, it's like an Xbox or a PlayStation. But I was like, dang, the tech has come so far. So I'd still think, I think that we're probably still 5 years away from real user case because we were talking about this. Like I put on my Quest 3 and I love it.
Yes.
I love how immersive it is. I'm still blown away like by how, powerful it is, but I'm not a gamer. And so I'm not going to use it every day. And so I experiment with like the productivity apps because I am curious about like multiple screens, like being in a hotel room, for example, if you're traveling and you can have your work desk on the go. I think those are compelling types of experiences. If I'm writing and I just want to like be totally distracted, I think, or if like I was in the office yesterday and I have an office that, I could shut the door. Well, we have an open workspace and there are a couple people on Teams meetings, Microsoft Teams meetings, and they're just being loud. And so I shut the door and I put on AirPods and I'm trying to seclude myself because it was just loud. But I think in the future, if I'm in an open space and I could put it on, I think those are really compelling use cases. And so I think gaming market is fine. And it, Xbox and PlayStations kill it, but it's also not going to be mass. Now, I have read that they've sold over 20 million of these devices, Facebook or Meta. And so you're like, that's a lot of people. But if you think about it by the iPhone market, or it's not, this is why it's like people have it, but I don't think people use it. I will say, I am super surprised over the last 6 months how much my kids use my Quest.
Okay. Yeah.
Like they use it. Like they like it. I always think of it. I remember like going to an arcade, and one of the arcade games I always loved playing because I couldn't play it anywhere else was the Area 51 gun one where you would pull out.
Yeah. And
it's interesting because a lot of the games have that draw where they're very unique to the platform, and it's like, but they're not like they're not necessarily I camp out on it. And so I think we're still probably a couple years. My hope is I read and this will be the last thing I'll say on it, but like my hope is that there is still something to do, something to handle with motion blur. It's still hard, even though the Quest is better. My wife gets motion sickness very easy and she doesn't even want to put on the headset.
Yeah. Same.
And I think that's about refresh rates, pixels,
Yep.
you know, how much viewable space. And I think the Apple device, the Apple Vision, I think the thought is that if in 3 to 5 years they release a standard one, you
Yep.
know, I think that that will bring a different type of market. And the argument I've heard that I actually really do believe is that the way that the personal computer space market was created
Yes.
was you had these CTOs started to buy computers for their employees.
Yep.
And now people were using a personal computer at home and they said, "Oh, I want
Mm,
one for my own." And I
yeah.
think there's a case that these Apple Pros, you know, these Apple Visions and these Quest 3s with Microsoft integrations will become a way for remote work to be tracked, monitored, and there's a lot of other issues that will come with that. But
Yes.
I think as people have them for work, it will justify a personal use and more. And so I think that's why
Mm,
that's going to take 3 to 5 years. And that's the argument where when I heard it, I was like, that makes sense because most people weren't buying these Macintoshes at like
yeah.
3,500 at the time or whatever it was.
Yep.
But
Yep.
now, you know, I have an iMac and, you know,
Yeah.
when I got an office at home, I go out and I spend, you know,
Yeah.
$2,000 on an iMac, not even thinking about it because I know I'm
Yeah.
going to get a lot of use out of it. I think
Yes.
the question with these VR devices is I don't know if I'm going to use it
Yeah.
ongoing, and because I'm not a
Yeah.
gamer, and so and it's still like I have it right here, like I have my Quest 3, and I use it for fun. I don't use it for work, and I got to be, and maybe
Yeah.
because I'm an old person now, but like I want to know what am I going to use it for work, like
Yeah.
if I'm going to build something. And so I think the remote display stuff is very compelling, but it's still a
Yes.
little glitchy. So that would be my long answer.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna throw up my prediction for where I think it's going, but I've been wrong to date. Like I keep thinking it's right here on the edge, you know. And you were one of the first, maybe the first that I knew of to do it. You went and got like the bunch of GoPros and
Yeah,
connected
yeah.
them to a 3D printed thing, and like you made a 360 video experience before anybody else in the online ministry space, and so you've definitely tinkered with the opportunity, but I think you're right of like the mass engagement opportunity just because of hardware, you know, access alone is a big barrier. But I think people aren't going to spend the money on the hardware if there isn't good software tools. And I think about the iPhone. The iPhone when it came out, it was like, oh, this is cool. But then it was when the apps started coming out on top of the great hardware
Yeah.
that it was like, oh, it can like the map and it can do that, it can do all of these things for me, and got a great camera on it, and it's got, you know, all of these functions that are enhancing my life. But it was, at the end of the day, it's probably more so the software that makes the hardware so valuable, where you're like, I got to have the hardware so I can access the software. And my opinion right now is that there's really not many great
Yeah.
apps that are functional either professionally or personally. Like my kids, like I've gone on enough roller coasters on the thing, or I've played ping pong, and like like the games from my perspective or the experiences are just not that interesting, and I'm not that interested in being a cartoon character.
Yeah.
And so this kind of perceived metaverse experiences are just a little bit like gimmicky to date. But it seems that what I'm even hearing about the Apple Vision Pro, and I think where even Meta is getting better at their avatars being more realistic than being so cartoonish, is I think going in the good direction. So here's the phases that I see from a
Mhm.
ministry engagement standpoint. But I'm in agreement. We're still probably 5 years away of one. I think where you're starting with VR chat is a good first step. I think it's going to be a small groups platform first,
Yep.
not a, we often think about our worship services first. I think it's small groups first. I think it's worship services second. I don't think it's like these metaverse environments that a lot of people have started with. I think it's just 360 video, you know, streamed, where it's almost as if you're sitting in the front row of a worship, you know, service, and you can like worship with other people and be there in the room, and it's an opportunity to really be in the room. As I think sports and concerts and things like that are going to integrate VR. There's just not a lot of good experiences like that yet created. I think sports is going to be
Sports is
fantastic
huge. Yep.
in VR, but I think that same function is going to translate to our worship environments. And then I think the third is going to be devotional type
Mm.
of content. I think, you know, I can't wait to see what YouVersion does with it in the future, or other platforms like that just create immersive prayer, Bible study, devotional teaching, discipleship resources within the platform. So that's where I think it will go when I think about this kind of what
Agreed.
you can do in a headset. But I also simultaneously think probably, I would almost say the last 10 minutes of this conversation are irrelevant to even think about too much, because this is where I do think it is the future. And I don't know if it's the last tech computing platform, but it is, I think, very much going to be a part of the future. I think it's more of a when, not if, but I still think it's years away
Yeah.
from mass adoption. And so it's fascinating. Jay, as we wrap up this podcast, you're taking, I believe, 10 pastors this next year through an intensive of, if you're going to really develop and your online church. So can you talk about the cohort and what you're doing with that?
Yeah. So I did a cohort a couple years ago, actually during COVID, and it was a lot of fun. And I decided to figure out how I could do it again. Um, and so the idea is to take some churches through an entire year. It would be 11 months together. And part of that is like do a digital audit of kind of what you're doing as a church and kind of present that in a way that you guys can kind of digest. And then we would pick some digital goals for the year, and then I would coach you through those goals. And so we would have monthly meetings, and then we would have 10 group sessions where talk everything from streaming to social to online groups and more, even running ads like YouTube
Yep.
ads and Instagram, Facebook ads, but kind of have 10 public sessions where we go through stuff. And kind of the goal is to have a group of 7-10 churches where you are learning together and you become friends.
Yep.
And I think it kind of comes out of that, you and I being kind of alone when we started. And
Yes.
when we got connected to each other and to a couple other big churches and other churches doing stuff, that
Yes.
I grew greatly, not because of my own, intelligence, but because of our community of people. And so
Yes.
I was very grateful for that. And so there's less of that right now. Like, I think that is happening. And so I was like, oh, this is one idea. I can't do it for a bunch of people, but I'm trying to limit it to about 7-8 churches. And so, I'm very excited. The plan is to start February, March of 2024. And we'll go through the next year. And so if, I'm kind of locking in people come January. And so, if you're interested, go to jkranda.com, and I have a promotion thing up there where you can see, let me know you came from the Social Media Church podcast. Cause I'll give you a discount on the sign up. It is a paid kind of group, but I'll give you a Social Media Church discount so that, so make sure you mention that to me if you sign up to talk to me to learn a little bit more.
Yes. I just, when Jay shared that he was doing this with me, I was like, Jay, you got to get on the podcast and we got to share this with this audience. Like, I want this audience to have the first dibs at those 8 spots. And I remember Jay, you and Alan George and myself and Oscar Soto, who recently reached out to me from Christ Fellowship, and there was a few of us, and then a few that kind of popped in and out of our kind of like unofficial cohort of like the crazies that went first, and we didn't have anyone that had been there before us. We were just like, how do we do baptism?
How do you do this? How do you do communion? All these,
how do we do communion? Like, we're figuring this out, and we were just like, we were opening everything. Like, here's my stats, here's everything, and the gold of the collective learnings. And I think what you're building of both that community for online pastors, as well as just your own experience, and basically the things, avoid all of these things, and focus on these things. It is, I just cannot recommend it enough, and I can't recommend you enough, and I won't go down that path again of celebrating Jay Kranda too much. But I can't recommend it enough. So go to jkranda.com, get on that cohort. And at the end of the day, I think what people will find is, whether you get in cohort or not, Jay is one of the most generous human beings alive, and he will do everything possible to help anyone in the world. And this is where I think you and I, Jay, have often had the tension of, we cannot respond to every. That's where I originally wrote my first book of, like, I can't respond to every request or email to help everyone as much as I want to and you want to. And so it's like, how can we make ourselves accessible to those that want it most and are most hungry. And so this is kind of a way you have structured and based on your experience in this. So it's going to be awesome. And I can't wait to journey. I hope, Jay, you'll invite me to a couple of those cohort
Yeah.
meetings and let me sit in on some of those, because I can't wait to hear, even updates, as leaders are journeying together, that you just get better together, and it's going to be awesome.
I do want to highlight, if you write one video I would recommend that I just created is how to run YouTube ads for churches. I think that's an ad that's just up on my website for free. And so if anything, just go there to check out that. And then if you want to learn more about the cohort, sign up and so forth. But yeah, just check out that video. I'm not proud by how many views it has, but I am proud about what it is.
It is though, Jay. It is like a niche. So I watched it right away when it came out, and I texted you. I was like, "This is gold." It's like 20 minutes where he just like basically like opens the curtain of here's what I'm doing right now, and here's the success I'm seeing. And I've been running YouTube ads for about a year, not nearly as successfully as Jay has. And I think he's doing some nuances for an online church experience that, and I think if you combine what we talked about on the front end of this podcast of what he's doing on YouTube with content, and then you take that YouTube ads video, I think there's going to be some gold for your church. So nothing else, get that. We're going to actually leave that link in the show notes as well. So if you go to socialmedia.church, we'll have a link to Jay's website. We'll have a link to that YouTube video. We'll have a link to all of Jay's social media handles. Jay, we appreciate you so much. Thanks for being on the podcast. Man. We love you, man.